Good morning. I hope it's still morning. Apologies for the delayed start. Welcome to the media briefing for this week's cluster, the economics cluster 2. You will recall that I think it was last year or earlier this year we had can we be together, colleagues? Okay. You'll recall that earlier this year we had the first cluster, economic cluster briefing. I remember there was trade in the industry and so on and so forth. So we are continuing with another second cluster of economics. You know the importance and objective of these weekly media briefings, and we are grateful for your attendance here physically and also the colleagues who are joining us virtually. We expected that there will be quite a number of colleagues joining us virtually because of the weather conditions and the traffic conditions. So, but we are grateful for your presence and welcome, and apologies once again for starting late. Normally this is supposed to have a stand, but it is fine. Okay. So this week you are going to receive the presentations, and you will be engaging with the chairperson of Employment and Labour, the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour, Honorable Chairperson Boyce Maneli. And then you will also engage with the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, Honorable Chairperson Tsakani Shiviti. And then also the Honorable Chairperson for the Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure, Honorable Mokgadi Phiri. And then the last and definitely not the least, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications, Digital Technologies, Honorable Khusela, Sangoni, Diko. So as it is the norm, all the chairpersons will present, and thereafter we will open the floor, both here physically and on the virtual platform for questions and answer session. We normally take about 2 rounds, so we should be done. And I know that after that, everyone is satisfied. Colleagues that are joining virtually, please remember to deposit your questions on the chat function or platform of that virtual platform or the parliamentary communication WhatsApp group, so that we can line up your questions for responses by the chairpersons. So without any waste of time, I would wish to invite Chairperson Maneli of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour to give his statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mloto. As I acknowledge the stakeholders here present, media houses, as well as your entire team from the Parliament Communications. Firstly, let me thank you for presenting this opportunity so that we proactively engage with the media on the work done by Parliament through its committees. And in this case, I, as you already said, represent Employment and Labour. Of course, it's important to foreground the presentation with the understanding that as committees who came in after the 29th May elections, were presented with legacy reports. So it's an important start that we are continuing from that point, so that we acknowledge the work already done in the 6th Parliament, and look at the challenges and the gaps that we need to deal with, but also informed by the quarterly reports we've received thus far, as well as the Auditor General report, because it gave us a better sense of what we would have looked at. I think the good part on the side of Parliament would have been the general induction of members, but also portfolio specific. So that you understand then the 4 areas that I may want to cover briefly, which will be the repositioning of the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the UIF, Compensation Fund, the CF, the implementation of Labour Activation Program, the LAP, inspection of compliance with labour legislation, as well as what we have been briefed on with regard to legislation, which is the National Labour Migration Policy. Just on the repositioning of the UIF and the Compensation Fund, I'm sure you do know the importance of the UIF in terms of the beneficiaries that it looks at, so I will not spend time on that. But just to emphasize the point that it's an important entity, and therefore its functioning at all times gets to be important. The Auditor General reports, as well as the UIF itself, confirmed that in the COVID period, that's when they started to really see the problems that they have as they were implementing TERS for the first time. And this would have attracted possible corruption, which led to a campaign they would have had within called the Follow the Money part. Of course, there's dissatisfaction with the pace of consequence punishment that is taking place. But as the committee, we are keeping our eyes on that. The second problem would have been the unlisted investments that are done through the PIC. As those who may have perused the Auditor General report would have seen that even the alignments in terms of financial statements create that problem of accountability on the side of the UIF, and that also affects its audit outcomes. When you get to the compensation fund, it's also an important one because you are also dealing with medical claims, injuries on duty, and so on. That also over time has had problems of accountability, record keeping, which also lead to possible corruption or fraud cases which are being followed up. I think the example in our own oversight would have been a report we got where a claim would be made, but right at the time of paying it out, it's diverted to an account that is not for the intended beneficiary. And of course, when you put all this together, it tells you that the other problem that exists, which the previous committee considered, is how it is structured. That it reports to the department, they are not structured in the way the other state entities are structured, which therefore calls for reconfiguration. But because of that arrangement, the ICT is also a problem that they should address. And we're very pleased that as we do the oversight, the progress reports we're getting is that those matters are now being attended to through the acting DG so that these entities are able to stand on their own. Of course, that reconfiguration will always get to be worried about it. That in some entities, once you talk reconfiguration, restructuring, it's loss of jobs. We've tried to ascertain this as part of our oversight, and we've given commitment that would not be the case. Quickly on the implementation of LAP, LAP is also UIF based, and this is something that would have come as part of an intervention to ensure that there's partnership between government and private sector, also with the departments, but more importantly, to make an intervention on mass employment that government need to look at. And as it gets practicalized, the example will be that on the 9th of January this year, already the minister and deputies would have been in the Western Cape to launch the program by allocating 651 million funding to 12 service providers in the different sectors of the economy in the Western Cape, with projections of about 17,300 job opportunities in the different sectors. But more allocations will still be done in the provinces. But I think what is important about it is that from a committee point of view, is that there should be a shift, that you do not train people and just send them back to unemployment. So wherever you give these funds, there must be a sense of where the job placements would be, so that in the true sense, it is about massifying employment. On inspections, with regard to compliance, again, in this regard, this is about compliance with a number of labor legislative frameworks that are available, whether it's basic conditions of employment, whether it is national minimum wage, whether it's occupational health and safety. So I would not spend a time on each. Safe to say that indeed, these inspections are also about going to the employer's premises, but as well as looking at documentation, whether there's compliance. And from where we are, the joint operations that we have seen, where there's SAPS, there's Department of Home Affairs and Department of Labor, we support them on the basis that they keep that balance. That whilst employers need to operate and make profit, but the rights of workers also are not compromised in the process, and that if they do comply, it means they have chances to prosper. However, from the committee point of view, which is also something that the ministry is taking care of, is that the number of inspectors are fewer than the work that you have. And it is against this backdrop that there's that commitment to look at 20,000 that must be put in, but on an incremental basis. So it's not 20,000 at a go, but incrementally, and this would start the soonest. The other point of concern as it relates to this, especially where employers are employing undocumented illegal immigrants, is that the fine itself is not a deterrent to what they do. So it's very easy to pay 2.5 for the people that you got, like we saw when we went to one company in Pretoria. We saw that. So you'd find that they say, no, there are no illegal immigrants. You find them, they get arrested. But very easily, you'll still find the same people because the fine is just not a deterrent. So we said there must be a rethink on that. Last point really will be on the National Labour Migration Policy, the LMP. You see, the National Labour Migration Policy, whilst it is a framework to comply with conventions that come from the ILO, in our view, the importance of that is that it presents now an opportunity at 3 levels. The first level being that it also helps us to look at the South Africans that may be moving out of the country, to look for better opportunities, that space is regulated in a way that they can also have their rights protected. But secondly, of course, we're also expected to look at those that migrate into our country, and that their rights, yes, have to be looked at. But from a committee point of view, the important point in this regard is that it also presents an opportunity that we do look even what you say you're bringing in the country as scarce skills, such that you consider South Africans first when we look at jobs. And we think this is an opportunity to respond to some of the genuine concerns that have come from people of the country, that in some instances, whether by perception or reality, they feel like these ones who come from outside may be more considered in the spaces of employment, even at the level where the skills needed are not really that of scarce skills. But the third element to it is that you are also having this national migration policy being considered at a time when small business development, when the Department of Home Affairs are also looking at something similar in terms of migration, immigration in those sectors, which would mean that you look at that law from a point of complementary and an understanding that it is when government is consolidated that it can act decisively. But if we go separate ways, there will always be that problem that sometimes you may be accused of not doing what you're supposed to do when in fact it is not in your mandate. But if you work together, you'll understand how that would happen. Like I said earlier, the joint operations have proven that once you have a joint approach, you are going to be effective in that regard. So that national labour migration policy will still be a point that comes back once the minister has taken it through the necessary processes. But the last point is that it also presents an opportunity to revive your interministerial approach, because that's what the policy proposes, so that the Department of Labor, as it relates to labor-related matters, would have that approach. Maybe the last point to really make is that the interventions in the labor market are not the exclusive purview of Dell, but everybody else would need to make that. And it is against this background, therefore, that we support the interventions of government where companies are distressed and that they can save the jobs, because it would still not make sense that you create more of the new jobs, but you are unable to save the jobs that are being lost. So government has to do everything else to ensure that where it's possible to save, they do so, so that the impact is seen. I think I want to end there on the 4 points and leave other matters for engagement later on if there is any point to further engage. And I thank you, Communications.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Maneli. Indeed, the comprehensive statement will also be issued after this, immediately after this media briefing. Thank you very much. May I invite the Honorable Chairperson for Science, Technology and Innovation.
Good morning and thank you, Chair. My name is Tsakani Shiviti, the Chairperson of Science, Technology and Innovation. We have observed the budget decrease of about 1.1 billion in Khusela, given that the Department of Science and Technology and Innovation is a key driver of economic growth and sustainable development. Planning and resources for innovation must be coordinated across government to ensure that South Africa achieves its objective goals. The transformation of a STI sector is crucial and starts at the basic level. Hence, the training of mathematics and science teachers is important in the creation of a pipeline of students pursuing careers in science, mathematics and engineering. Collaboration with the Department of Education is necessary to support this. Science awareness and illiteracy programs are needed to educate the public about importance of STI. The committee is excited by the number of programs bringing science closer to everyone. The committee will first require more details briefing about specific programs, including the Global Change Program, the Grassroots Innovation Program, and support initiatives for basic education, the transformation framework, and the science engagement strategy, R&D investment, and the hydrogen economy, the circular economy, and mineral beneficiation. The committee calls on the department to prioritize transformation, which will address the committee's concerns around having a transformed, representative and inclusive science systems. The shift to green energy in South Africa is blessed with an abundance of coal and other mineral endowment. Coal is central to our energy generation, but we now find ourselves in a situation where others are setting the energy agenda for us, which is not desirable situation for our country. Therefore, we call on the DSTI to lead and prioritize innovation in the energy generation sector. We are interested in the department's carbon capture program and the strides being made towards achieving clean energy. The department must lead the manufacturing of technological instruments that can assist in the production of clean energy. The funding of TIA of which the committee has noticed that there is very little uptake of the funding of TIA. We need to be broad-based, and the committee would like to see more funding for the previously disadvantaged. This is where TIA is important and needs to be pronounced. South Africa's reindustrialization is important for the committee, and the field has challenges with maths, science, and technology. The current status quo and the curriculum we have in universities remain a concern, as is the state of innovation in TVET colleges. We should, for example, capitalize on SKA and MEACAT projects. Research at this industrial scale project should benefit Black South Africans and should be part of the projects and innovation in radio telescopes research. The SATCOMS projects aim to address the challenges and the digital divides and ensure stable access to communication to all South Africans as we move towards a digital economy. As opportunities are presented, especially for the marginalized and the disadvantaged, communication satellites will reduce the cost. This system will also create jobs. If we look at the entire African continent, only 30% of Africans have connectivity. And yet, satellite communication and connectivity is a critical component to solve our problems in South Africa. If we look in South Africa alone, only 60% is connected, and the rest of the 40% is left in the dark. The most important aspect of this project is that we improve the lives of our citizens. We have been talking about these projects for the past 20 years, and now it is time to make bold decisions to move ahead. As Angola has done to get the Angolians connected, we should also do the same. The satellite strategy is crucial to close the digital divide, and establishment of SA-based satellites will position us globally in the comm sector, reduce costs and cash outflows. We are also concerned about the manner in which research is more funded than the actual output, which is supposed to be to be done by TIA, which is the one that funds innovation, the actual innovation. So there should be a balance between the funding of the actual innovation and the research of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson Shiviti, on matters that the committee is dealing with, science, technology, and innovation. May I then invite the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure, Honorable Phiri.
Thank you, Mr. Good morning to our guests, the media house, and colleagues, fellow South Africans. I want to take this opportunity and appreciate the organizers. Indeed, it's important for us to brief and talk to our fellow citizens about the work that we're doing. I'm going to focus on 4 major issues. They've got many issues that we can deliberate and inform South Africans, but unfortunately with time limited, we chose to come and speak about matters impacting infrastructure and construction projects, the state of government properties, the culture of non-payment by department clients, the IDT oxygen plant. But allow me, Ntate Mloto, to start by saying as my colleague has said, we are guided also by the legacy report that was left by the sister administration. One of their recommendations that we took it serious when we assigned the office is that all members of the portfolio has undergone the capacity training workshop with the National School of Government and VET School of Construction, Economics and Management, so that we understand our work. And it has assisted us to equip and empower all members with a very complex sector that we are dealing with. And it also dealt with us and allowed us to have knowledge and technicalities of the profession built environment. Some of us were not even professionals in the space of construction of or built environment, but we also aligned ourselves with the infrastructure sector that is concurrent and functional to different spheres of government. As I said, the matter that I'm going to start with is while the construction project creates jobs and give confidence to business and social economic growth, they must always be safe and non-threatening to our people. You'll consider or you'll remember the incident of George. As you are saying, we want to talk about it. It also traumatizes and loses the lives of our people if we are not accurate and follow all the necessary steps for a building to become a proper building. We furthermore, the issue of safety on construction and infrastructure project site requires attention to legislations and regulations of safety, health, environment, and occupational hazard. In such as a crime, the extortion and construction site invasion are a concern to us. The committee has undergone and it's willing to take its journey to George and go and do a public participation and understand what happened or what has transpired to that incident in George. We'll be waiting for the chair of chairs to allow us for that trip to go to George. So we can't give you even a specific date when are we going to George, but in our plan, in the second quarter around March, we are anticipating to go to George and do a public participation and go further into details and understand what happened to that collapse of George. Therefore, move to the state of government properties. The property management trading entity, which we refer it to PMTE, which is responsible for managing and acquiring and also depositing all the national government immovable assets, needs to strengthen its internal controls, and we really spoke about it in our committee. At this stage, it is very disappointing to see the state of government property left unprotected and being vandalized. If you remember media, you also have the issue of telecom towers. That has been a thorny issue. We went to telecom towers and observed the building. It is in a poor state, but we said we took a resolution that they must start with the investigation. The independent investigation must kick in. We are relying on the minister to start that process. And the immovable asset register contains property valued at a cost of 150 billion, yet the entity does not show the ability to turn that value into liquidity by trading. It is supposed to be a property trading entity, yet it is not yet fully operational. The committee has to assess this entity and whether it remains viable in its current form or it is time to get a key department together to discuss the form that the entity requires in the future. It is very much critical that DPWI and PMTE work with the local communities because our properties are all over. In the local communities, municipal councils must also assist us, the construction sector and the security cluster. The committee scheduled a meeting in this new term to address this in discussion with the National Treasury as well, the Department of Public Services and Administration, and also the DPWI. Out of this meeting, we hope to further discuss and acquire on recognition of the PMTE so that it is more responsible for the future needs of government and business community and the people of South Africa as a whole. I'll move to the culture of non-payment. We are concerned as a department and a committee that the department does not have the necessary legal measures to enforce payment. It has to jump through far too many hoops to get payment. Yet the PMFMA provide that payment must be made within 30 days of its receipts of invoices. This put the lives of and business of small business and medium imaging contractors at risk, and client departments must get their house in order so that we have the coherent governance. On this part, particularly, we are talking all the departments that we are servicing. You'll remember that buildings belongs to DPWI. We've got our clients that are not paying what is due to us, and it makes the PMTE to be dysfunctional. Lastly, we'll talk about the oxygen plant tender. It has been roaming and roaming on the media space, and the committee has noted the appointment of the PricewaterhouseCoopers, which you also referred to, PwC, by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure to probe the 800 million oxygen plant tender process. As the committee, we await the outcome of this investigation on where the circumstances surrounding the awarding of this tender and whether there are many officials that needs to be held accountable. So we can't talk much, but we are saying we've accepted the appointment of the PwC. Moloto, allow me, even though I know it's an interest to media, that we also accept the signing of the appropriation bill by the president as a committee, because it has went all the stages, the necessary processes that needs it to be done. So as a committee, we are accepting, and we want to say to the president, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Phiri. The last presentation will be by the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies, Honorable Khusela Sangoni Diko.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mothapo. Let me greet my fellow panelists, members of the media, stakeholders present. I suppose I must greet the members of the media as well. Let me greet the members of the media. Mr. Mothapo, I join my counterparts today in appreciating this opportunity to interact with members of the media. I think this is a very important mechanism that has been created for us to report back and update South Africans on the work that we are doing in the 7th Parliament. Now, since the establishment of our committee, the committee that I chair is Communication and Digital Technologies, we've been engaged in the delivery of our mandate of lawmaking, executive oversight, and public participation. This is in relation to the Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, as well as the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, the DCDT, and all entities within the portfolio. These entities for the GCIS, it is the Media Diversity Development Agency, the MDDA, as well as 13 entities under the umbrella of the DCDT. And in here, I also include the government's interests in telecom. Our focus within these areas have really been driven by the need to ensure that government and related entities deliver on their stated vision of a connected and a digitally transformed South Africa. Our approach to our work has always been guided by the understanding that we are not only an activist parliament, but we are an interventionist parliament. So during the course of our work, 4 focus areas have emerged which have required our attention. The first one is really around creating a conducive legislative, policy, and regulatory environment to drive innovation and development of the sector. The second focus area is around the governance, stability, and sustainability of SOEs within the portfolio. Thirdly is expanding digital infrastructure, accessibility, usage, and digital skills. And finally, accelerating economic participation by marginalized groups and inclusive development of the sector. Now, in creating a conducive legislative environment, we've noted in the past couple of weeks that the policy, legislative, and regulatory environment that governs the ICT industry is horribly outdated. The Electronic Communications Act, which provides the legal framework for convergence of broadcasting, signal distribution, and telecom sectors, was last updated over a decade ago, as was the Broadcasting Act, which establishes the broadcasting of the Republic, only amended last in 2014. Now, our view is that the national and the international ICT landscape has changed significantly since then. For example, there's no legal policy or regulatory framework for audio and audiovisual services in the country, for e-commerce, or even for the so-called over-the-top services, which includes your streaming services such as Netflix, Showmax, and others. We believe that this legislative and policy environment vacuum hinders policy certainty. It hinders the development of the industry as well as hinders innovation in the sector. And this will be the focus of the committee this year and for the course of the term. On governance, stability, and sustainability of state-owned enterprises within the portfolio, we're looking first at the SABC, and we will be prioritizing for recommendation to the National Assembly the SABC bill by June of this year, June 2025. The bill was introduced in Parliament in October 2023, and it seeks to position the SABC to compete in the digital era. It seeks to separate the public mandate from the commercial services, establish a subsidiary commercial board, and provide a legal framework for the funding of the public mandate of the broadcaster. As a committee, we believe that this bill is important and urgent to ensure the sustainability and the viability of the SABC through a legislative framework for the implementation of crucial reforms necessary to save this strategic public institution. The SABC is a pivotal institution of state, necessary to deepen democracy and empower citizens to effectively participate in the shaping of the national discourse. So while we have noted the minister's opposition to 2 sections of the almost 30 sections of the bill, the committee will proceed with processing the bill unless and until information is received indicating that the minister has now received the requisite authority from cabinet to withdraw this executive bill. We continue to believe that the issues that the minister raised are not insurmountable and that they may be resolved during the amendment process by the committee, which, by the way, is a competent law-making authority. Incidentally, I do want to mention that in the submissions that we had received, the minister's own party had written that the SABC is a state-owned entity to be administrated by the executive. The executive's role is oversight, and the executive has no governance role. Having the minister develop the SABC's funding model would violate this. What the bill should do is further empower the SABC and Parliament, not take away their powers. I'm quoting on the submission received from the Democratic Alliance. On the Post Bank, we welcome the steady progress being made by the bank to fully comply with the variation notice of the South African Reserve Bank, with 10 of the 11 conditions completed and the process to license the bank to be completed in due course. We've also noted that the one outstanding item on the variation notice is the replacement of all gold SASSA cards to black cards, which will then meet the security safeguards that are required by the South African Reserve Bank. As a committee, we join government in calling on all SASSA beneficiaries who still have gold cards to ensure that they replace these with black cards by the 28th of February 2025 at various distribution sites across the country. These are more than 200 sites, which include the retailers that SASSA beneficiaries use, amongst them Boxer, ShopRite, Usave, Pick n Pay, and ShopRite. And we're calling on members of the public, SASSA beneficiaries, to ensure that those cards are replaced and to avoid any interruption to receiving their social grants. There is a number also that the Post Bank has advertised, commercial break. It's *120*218*3#. And there they can find out where they can get their nearest collection point to receive the service from the bank. They may also use post offices in certain instances. As a committee, we are really heartened by the strengthening of the governance environment within the Post Bank, and we continue to make a call to government and all stakeholders to support intentionally the Post Bank as it seeks to deliver its mandate to ensure financial inclusion for all. It's quite disappointing that you would have even members of parliament seeking to move SASSA grant payments away from the Post Bank, seeking government itself not utilizing the post office for the delivery of its goods. We must be intentional. If these institutions are to be strengthened, we have to ensure that government it itself is deliberate in using these services. So we're calling on SASSA beneficiaries to replace those cards as outlined. Ladies and gentlemen, since the inception of the 7th Parliament, we've also been seized with a matter concerning the turnaround and sustainability of the South African Post Office. We were first appraised on this matter by the legacy report that my counterparts have referred to. The legacy report of the previous committee, led by the Honorable Maneli, following a court order that mandated business rescue practitioners to take over SAPO. The committee has met with the business rescue practitioners on at least 3 different occasions to inquire about the sustainability and future-proofing of the South African Post Office. Now, while we acknowledge and recognize the work that has been done by the BRPs to date, even though it is at an immense financial cost to the state, the committee holds the firm view that the BRPs should have and ought to have, in terms of their mandate, produced and presented a sustainable plan that will guarantee the post office return to liquidity and solvency, as well as ensuring that it is future-proofed. We remain unconvinced that the BRPs have done enough to secure strategic and meaningful partnerships in this regard. To this end, the committee will be engaging with the minister, want to seek to understand the exit strategy of the BRPs. They cannot be there forever. And during the course of its oversight work, we will also initiate stakeholder consultations with the private and other interested sectors on potential strategic partnerships for the executive's consideration in order to resuscitate and save the post office. Government must be deliberate in its support for the Post Bank and the post office, as I've said, and we continue to call on them to develop regulations ring-fencing certain categories and quantum of work for these institutions without compromising the required compliance to banking regulation and public finance regulation. The Post Bank must be the primary platform for government financial grant and loan instruments. Our role as the committee is to ensure that concrete plans in the forms of policy and legislation are in place, conduct oversight on the implementation thereof. So it's against this background that we decided in December 2024 to conduct an emergency oversight visit to the State Information Technology Agency, SITA, and this was following reports of governance and service delivery failures, as well as allegations of maladministration and corruption. As a country, we need an efficient SITA with stability at the governance level and zero maladministration if we are to succeed in our quest to digitize government services. SITA remains a key service delivery entity in the digitalization of government as a whole and ultimately service delivery to citizens. The challenges at SITA are serious, and the committee holds the view that there is a need for urgent intervention from Parliament aligned to our powers and functions. The committee will deliberate on the oversight report on SITA and the recommendation for a full-scale parliamentary inquiry into the affairs of SITA. We have noted Minister Malatsi's intervention to request the Public Service Commission investigation into SITA, which came on the morning of the committee's oversight visit to the entity. This matter and the imperatives to safeguard SITA from further instability and disruptions will be taken into account as part of our deliberations. As a committee, we remain convinced of the necessity to strengthen SITA to be a preferred and reliable partner and service provider in the quest for inclusive digital transformation of government and public services. On expanding digital infrastructure, accessibility, usage, and skills, during this term, the committee will hold several engagements with ICASA, the Independent Authority of South Africa, Communications Authority of South Africa, to inquire about interventions to reduce data costs, the quality of service of the mobile network operators, spectrum management, compliance with license conditions, competition commission directives, and the universal services obligations. We will also engage with the mobile network operators on their commitment to and their deliberative implementation of the foregoing issues, as well as transformation imperatives. The committee has firmly placed the digitization of government services on its agenda for the 7th Parliament. The 4th Industrial Revolution not only ushered in the phase of artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, but it has also revolutionized the world and the nature of work. So we are taking a keen interest in the work being done by the department and its entities to leave no one behind by closing both the connectivity and the usage gap through a holistic approach to infrastructure rollout, digital skills development, lowering the cost of devices, and reducing the cost of data. We would also like to see greater attention paid to digital technologies for industry, covering amongst them digital health, education, agriculture, and many others. The focus of government cannot solely be on digital communications technology, but not on other digital industrial technologies. If we indeed claim that ICT is a critical enabler of economic development, the department should be looking at this matter in a wider lens. And in this regard, we'll be seeking a joint sitting with the DT's Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry to discuss the location of ICT within the industrial policy. Government is expected to accelerate the rationalization of portfolio entities and finalize the process to establish a state digital infrastructure company, which must be adequately resourced and capacitated to deliver on its mandate. To this end, spectrum should be allocated to the state digital infrastructure company, or in the meantime, any of the mandated state-owned entities on an open access basis, and significant attention and urgency to the consolidation of fiber assets of the state, which are sitting in a number of entities, including Eskom, Transnet, Prasa, Sandral, and many others. The Portfolio Committee shall further call for a full audit of compliance to the first round spectrum allocation conditions, USOs, and the license conditions to be completed before the next round of allocation. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, another priority for the Portfolio Committee on Communications is on innovation, competition, economic transformation, and inclusive development in the sector. I welcome the remarks by the Chairperson of Science and Technology, who spoke about the need to ensure that there is greater resourcing of particularly the Technology Innovation Agency, but all other institutions that are tasked with research and development as well as innovation. The committee has noted, amongst others, the decision of the Competition Commission Tribunal relating to the proposed Vodacom massive transaction, a proposed transaction between MultiChoice and a French company, Canal Plus, as well as reports of the minister's intention to amend our country's BEE laws to accommodate a certain satellite for communications provider. The committee will engage with the minister on this issue during the course of the term. It is undoubtable that our view will always be that government and regulators must ensure that there is a level playing field when licensing similar ICT services, irrespective of whether those services are terrestrial or satellite-based, considering both license requirements as well as obligation. We'll continue to call for digital skills training for youth, women, and people with disabilities in the most far-flung and underserved communities through NEMISA, which has as its mandate to catalyze digital skills development for meaningful use of digital technologies. Finally, we call on the mobile operators, the mobile network operators, and other role players in the ICT space to not only fund innovation, but ensure that they deliberately and intentionally drive transformation within the sector. Thank you very much, and we continue, I think, as a committee, working with government and the industry to ensure that South Africa stays ahead of the curve in this ever-evolving digital world. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson Sangoni Diko, and also all the chairpersons of the Economic Cluster 2 for the sound and detailed presentations on the work, the programs and priorities of these important oversight committees of Parliament. Thank you very much for sharing in a very detailed way the work that these committees are seized with. So this brings us to the next stage of which is engagement with the presiding officers. And once again, thank you very much and welcome to our valued, esteemed stakeholders from various organizations and entities, institutions. You are welcome. Welcome to the members of the media again. We are going to start with the first round, which we normally give it to the members of the media. Once we are done with them, depending how many questions we're having, we can even combine it with the inputs and questions from the stakeholders. But we do start with the first round dedicated to the members of the media. I see that quite a number of them are on the virtual platform. I'm going to Khusela. I assume that you are following. Are there any questions on the virtual platform? And the chairpersons will just, okay. In fact, we should be prioritizing people who are physically here. Let's start with, not that there's anything wrong with those who are joining us remotely, but let's start here in the hall with the SABC. I see your hand is up. Any other member of the media? You will be the second. And then we will then go to the virtual platform. Just your name and the institution that you are representing. Thank you very much. Then the chairpersons will take note and they will give them an opportunity to respond at the end. Thank you very much. In that order.
Good afternoon. My name is Bulelani from SABC News. And my first question is directed to the Honorable Maneli. You make the statement that the sanctions or fines that are meted out against defaulting or non-compliant employers are not a deterrent to the employment of, I guess, people who don't have the proper papers. As legislators, I mean, what would you be doing to ensure that those fines are actually increased so that the problem of illegal migration can actually be taken seriously by employers? And I guess also linked to that is what time frame would you give yourself as legislators, whether the amendments will come through the department or will be driven by a parliament? Perhaps maybe you can give us a time frame relating to how those can be addressed. The second question for me, again, is to the Honorable Phiri. The expropriation bill, as you correctly pointed out, is quite a hot political potato. Now, after the president signed this legislation into law, the minister was saying one thing, and the deputy minister was saying another thing. As the chairperson of the committee, given that this legislation is a product of parliament, what impression are you getting from the department in terms of whether there is a consensus regarding the full implementation of the expropriation bill? And the last question is to the Honorable Sangoni Diko. You've covered me in relations to the finalization of the SABC bill. I'm quite interested in getting a clarity around the issue of electronic communication fees and the reforms thereto. I'm interested in you giving us a clear and concise explanation what you actually want to achieve out of that process. And secondly, one of the former communications ministers, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams, about in 2020, did make a proposals to say that multi-choice and other service providers should be paying the SABC some fees given that they are also on their platforms. Is that proposal still on the table? And linked to that is around the concern that was recently made by Elon Musk around the BEE ownership requirements in that space, saying that they may act as a deterrent from some of the entities that would want to operate in that space. Can you give me maybe a perspective from where you are? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just like full.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Khusela Nyanya, and I'm the founder and director of Ulwazi Scientific Communications and STEM Research. And firstly, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me here again. And it's so lovely to have Tsakani here, who is representing science, technology, and innovation. You spoke extensively about a lot of things that we are interested in as Ulwazi. So Ulwazi was initially registered as a science communication, and maybe Ms. Diko would be interested in being part of this as well. But Ulwazi was first registered as a science communication and carbon capture company. It's a private company. And we have seen a huge shift because when we started, we immediately got communication from Black postgraduates who need assistance with their studies. And now this is the shift that we have sort of taken. And we would like to scale in this regard. We want to partner with the Department of Science and Technology. However, we have no idea how to go about doing this. And I'm seeing that you also have carbon capture projects going on. It would be lovely to get in touch about those. But my point is this, that it would be very important for companies like ours to know what channels we need to take in order to maybe be subsidized by the government, but largely to collaborate with the government. Because as we scale, we incorporate and we collaborate with Black scientists, we incorporate and collaborate with Black researchers in general. We started as a STEM and research company, but now we are servicing our clients are across the board of research, which is telling us that there's a huge need for support in the research field. So I call upon you as the chairs to tell me what should we do to get more support from you, from the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I suppose that goes to all the chairpersons. On the virtual platform from the members of the media, there are two questions from Eyewitness News, Lindsay. Why has neither of these committees, and this is directed to Labour, as well as Public Works and Infrastructure, chairpersons, why has neither of these committees yet called the department concerned to brief it on its findings, even if only preliminary, on what led to the George building collapse? That's the first one. To Honorable Phiri, please elaborate on what kind of information the committee would want to obtain from a public hearing on the George building collapse, given that the official findings have not been released yet. So those are the questions from, I'm not sure whether there are still others. So those are the questions. Maybe we can take more from the stakeholders and members of the media in the House, if there's any, so that the chairpersons can deal with all this at once. Are there any further questions or input from the stakeholders and members of the media? Okay. You want a second bite? This time it must be a question. Thank you, Doc. You can proceed.
All right, thank you, Chair. So this time my question is around, well, it's more of a comment and applauding, really, because as a researcher, I agree with Tsakani that the research gets more, I would say, attention, therefore funding. But we also need to look at the outputs. And science communication was one of these outputs that are not given much attention, and I would even say undermined. But this is how we grab more of our people to come into the field of science that we need to put out there. So I guess the question would be, how are you making any shifts from how the old funding methods were done into making sure that what you're advocating for is actually implemented, where the outputs are funded as much as the research? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other hand that I may have missed? Okay. All right. I'm going to give, is there any other question virtually?
Yes, Chair, from Nodana Hadebe, the provincial chairperson. What are the key provisions of the SABC bill and how will it affect the broadcasting sector in South Africa?
All right. So those are the questions, Honorable Chairpersons. I see there is, I thought that you will be allowed to respond from where you are seated using those mics. But I think it will be much safer to go back to the podium, given that there is a microphone there of the media. So can I start with Honorable Maneli?
Let me appreciate the questions, not so many as I would have expected. Thank you. Maybe starting with the last one on my part with regard to the George and the calling of either the ministers to come before the committee from the eyewitness news. Just to indicate that this is dependent firstly on the programming, and from a draft program that we did, we would have prioritized George in the first quarter as we open. But the George collapse is not just like there's been reference to even infrastructure. It's a multidisciplinary, and you'll expect a multidisciplinary report in that regard. So the feedback we got from the ministry would have been that the department at this point may not be ready with that report, as there are also dependencies from the others, and we'll have to then reschedule that. But what is important is that we would have prioritized it from the point of the committee to do oversight on that, so that we don't depend only on what gets to be reported in media articles and so on, but get it from those that do it. So there's that commitment that it will still come before the committee. So we are now revising our program, which we sent out, which had this as its priority. On the other two questions from the SABC, Bulelani, and I want to start from the point that indeed we're emphasizing the point that they are not a deterrent, those fines. So you need to relook at them. And as you correctly say, it's the task that also the legislature must look at. we are engaging with the ministry in this regard, but with an understanding that there's also a need to look at the law differently. Because the issue about fines, as you put it in legislation, every time you have to make such a determination, it's an amendment process, and that takes longer. So for some of these, it's matters that we think should be considered differently from a point of regulation, which allows the minister to assess the material conditions that prevail at a particular time and make that determination. So I'm saying that's at least what we are putting forward so that it is considered. But I also want to emphasize that the fines should not, again, be really looked at just from a point of the finances, that you'll just put a figure, 2,500 for every illegal immigrant that's put in. But try and ensure that we enforce the laws that make it obligatory. And that's why the National Labour Migration Policy is something we're also looking at, that you have to employ South Africans. That's it. So that we understand it's a contribution not only to the economy, but you are really dealing with the social problems that we are faced with as a country. Otherwise, it's very easy to pay 2.5, but in a turnover of billions, that's really minute. And it will not change the situation we are in. So you can decide to disinvest completely because you can afford the fine. So I think it's also about an attitude and behavior issue that must be changed. With regard to the timeframes that you are saying we probably need to address, I think it's a difficult one. You would know also from experience that some of the laws have taken long because we are in a participatory democracy. So the public has a role to play and all other stakeholders. And in some instances, it gets to be quite contentious legally. And then you get taken to courts and it takes longer. We can make a number of examples that are there that you know. But I think the attitude from inductions we've had and what we've learned in the experience, if one was to put real time frames without undermining the need for public participation, is that, remember, you would have Section 75 and then Section 76. The processes would not be the same. At least some of the bills that processed in the previous committee would mainly have been Section 75. It was easy to deal with the SAPO. It was easy to deal with the post-bank one, right? Because almost all stakeholders would agree. But you can think about others that have been for 15 years in the pipeline. So if you were to talk any time frame that's reasonable, is that you must be able to conclude legislation and its implementation, and that's our view, and its implementation in a term that discusses that legislation, because it gives you a better way of appraisal in terms of whether that legislation is workable or not, as opposed to be doing it as you just get to the exit of the term, and those that come in do not really understand the circumstances that led to you looking at that bill in a particular way. So once you've started implementation, then there will not be even confusion once a law is signed that actually it went through a process. And that process yielded to that ascension by the president on that law. So I don't want to look like we do not recognize public, and that is why my response, it's really about seeing it within that term. I think that's what we have been proposing to the department on the many legislative pieces that are currently sitting in NEDLEC. And of course, I'm not commenting on them for one reason again, that we must also not just be doing public participation for the sake of it, but we must be seen to be giving space to public to express its views, and that Parliament should not be very quick to get involved in such, so that there's still space to do so. Otherwise, it will be like just going through motions. The legislation is before Parliament and it goes through. We've never interrogated it. We've never heard the public. And I think that's very important in a government and Parliament that is seen as the tribune of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maneli. Honorable Shiviti.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Kwelisa, for your questions. On the issues of collaboration with the relevant department, which is the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, on research, as your institution is dealing mostly with research, there is a research foundation, NRF, that is an entity of the department that is mainly dealing with the research part of all the innovation material that must then be taken and I wanted a better word, and to be delivered by TIA, which means then that is the end product. So they do have funding also for postgraduates on research. So I think it would be better if you could collaborate with NRF on the matters of research, because they are most embedded on research. So now on funding, on better ways of funding, we have had joint committees with the committee led by Honorable Honorable Chair, Honorable Khusela Diko. We have had a proper engagement on how we are going to merge our efforts on making sure that we deliver to our people and our departments, our relevant departments deliver to our people. We've also had a joint portfolio with trade, but we are joining portfolios so that we assist the money of innovation that is in other portfolios, so that those funds are properly located to issues of innovation. So the reason we are doing that is that our portfolio committee overlaps to other portfolio committees and other departments. So as and when innovation material is there in TIA, there must be a way that they are properly funded. But TIA also funds, it focuses mostly on innovation that deals with challenges, with local challenges. So if ever there is a Department of Agriculture that has funds for innovation, we engage them to say, why don't you channel those funds to TIA so that the innovation that is happening that side that has to do with agriculture is properly fast-tracked. So that is the better way of doing it. But we have also called on government to say, on treasury to say that, can you at least increase the budget of innovation? Because there's no country that grows without funding innovation. Innovation has proven to be the side of growth and also for economic growth. We have seen most of industrialized countries, they put more focus on innovation and funding innovation. So in our case, the department is underfunded. Never mind the budget cuts. It's highly underfunded. So we've called on Treasury to say, fund innovation for the development of our country, because there are a lot of young people out there and all South Africans out there that have brilliant ideas to come up with solutions that our country is faced with through innovation. And we believe that if they could be properly assisted, like now we have a grade 6 learner that has just founded a car that runs with water. We also were briefed in the portfolio committee that there's another young person that is using plastic to make oil. So now, to make a fuel. So now, these are innovations that must be funded and must be preserved by South Africa, and their IPs must be preserved here. Because if they are not funded and assisted from here, we are running a risk of all these innovations to be captured by other countries, and now they will become properties of other countries, and it's no longer an innovation that was supposed to be the South Africa is supposed to be boasting about, because really out there we are copying and consuming innovations of other countries, but we are not assisting our innovators and our innovation from here in the country to be consumed all over the world. So I think, thank you for your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shiviti. Honorable Phiri.
Thank you, Chairperson, once again. I thought I'll be having a lot of questions, but yeah, we are very fortunate. It means we have presented very clear. Let me start with the SABC. And also appreciate your question, but to be honest, it's not an issue of impression. We've noted the comments by the minister and the deputy minister. Unfortunately, pieces of legislation is not a choice. They went through all the necessary steps. Public participation came to Parliament, it was passed. Then the last part was just for the president to sign, and now it's an act. All of us, it's a constitutional mandate, so it's not by choice. Then it automatically tells you, I can say whatever that I want, but when there's a matter that needs to be processed, you are a member of Parliament, we took an oath, all of them. Only maybe those who are executive through the presidential process. But what I know currently, my DM and the minister, they are members of Parliament, and they know those processes. Who minister has been an ordinary member of Parliament. I believe whatever that he says, it's outside. That's his opinion. But to be honest, it's a constitutional mandate. He has to. So I don't want to dwell into that. My response is that it's not by choice. It's not an issue of how you are impressed and all this stuff. It's a constitutional mandate. So it's an act. I hope you are covered. The second matter is from Eyewitness. Why the first part, if I recall it very well, is that why we have not briefed or went out and briefed the media about the collapse. In our committee, since we started, we deliberated about it. Yes, as Honorable Maneli says, it's a joint thing. It needs different departments. In our committee, we've deliberated about it. And one of our roles, or most of our entities, they've got different roles. You have CBE, which is professional for built environment. They need to play part. So one thing that we'll want to get from George, we want to get, did they meet the relevant standard? Did they follow the right procedures to start with the building? If not, then it's a different case. If yes, then also it's a different case. We will have CIDB. Those constructors are the right ones. Up to the point, you know, you've got different levels, or you call them grades. When you are given a grade 8 and you build something that even collapse, then it brings questions. How did you arrive to that grade? Is it only issues of finance, or you have got experience? You've built number of buildings that were approved, and those buildings, they're there. You can see them, or you're qualified to build. So you've got number of things that we need to look upon as a committee. We've got different, and also even the part of innovation, you have Agrima SA. Agrima also deals with products that are brought by innovators. You've got different products that are approved by Agrima. So those are the things that as a committee we want to we want to understand, did you follow the right steps? Then Labour will come on the side and talk about its issues. We'll also invite Labour as well. If they are available, they'll go with us, and we'll also the municipality, local government also plays a vital role. You can't build a structure in a local municipality and they cannot come and do their regulations. They need to monitor and get whether you are in the relevant standard or not. So those are different things that we are going to look upon, and we'll invite the relevant people who are supposed to be part. At the same time, we'll want to understand and try to bring closure. As Parliament, we send our condolences to those families, those who lost their brothers, their wives, and whoever, how they call them. So it's part of saying we are not ignorant as government. We also sympathize with them and want to do the right thing and avoid in the near future to have such tragedy. So I hope I've covered the two questions. As I've said, we still have energy. We're supposed to bring more. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we did say that these cluster briefings are intended to deepen accountability, openness, and public communication. So you must also intensify on your side with these questions. I agree with the chairperson. Honorable Sangoni Diko.
Thank you, Chairperson, and let me thank everybody for the questions that have been posed. Maybe let me start with Bulelani. My apologies, Mr. Philip. I don't think I understood your first question around electronic communication fees, so I'll ask you to repeat that one. But let me speak to the other issues that you raised, and I'm answering this question also responding to I think it was Mr. Nodan about the provisions of the SABC bill. Now, this bill of the SABC, as I indicated, it seeks to repeal the Broadcasting Act of 1999. It was amended in 2014, but the point that we're making is that the world has evolved so much since then. SABC and other people in the broadcasting sector are not only providing services through radio and television. You sit here, you have access to SABC News on YouTube, on your apps, on your phones, SABC Plus and so forth. So the environment has changed drastically, and that's what the Act seeks to do, to empower the SABC to be able to operate in that area. Then it says, it then looks at the role of the minister and explicitly seeks to protect the independence of the SABC. And that is why we reject with contempt any assertion that says that this bill is about a government or even parliament wanting to exert influence over the bill, over the SABC. If you look at the bill, it makes explicit provisions that the minister may not, for example, dismiss anybody based on programming or editorial content and things like that. So it speaks to those issues as well. A key contentious issue in the bill is around the funding of the SABC. I mean, we all know that the TV license regime, by and large, has failed. You have almost 90% of people who have TV licenses who are not paying for TV licenses. And you'll hear many reasons for this. People saying, I don't watch SABC. You see, the TV license is not about whether you watch SABC or not. It seeks to fund the public mandate of the SABC. And the bill goes into the public mandate, sets out exactly what it is. And maybe just to briefly explain, The public mandate of the SABC demands of the SABC, which is not demanded of any other broadcaster, that you shall broadcast in all 11 official languages. You shall, not you may, you shall ensure that you accommodate people, for example, people who are hearing impaired and therefore need sign language. The SABC is compelled to do that. The SABC is compelled to carry national sports programming and as well as developmental sports. You won't open any other broadcaster and find school sports or any of the other sports that are not your mainstream, your big bucks type of sports being run there, because they don't bring money for them. The SABC is compelled to do that. Now, when you fund the public mandate of the SABC through the payment of your TV license, which I think all of us should encourage, because at the end of the day, it even helps those other broadcasters who do not have the same obligations of the SABC. It's not then just a TV license because I have SABC or not. There's an argument also that says, no, people don't pay TV licenses because they don't watch TV or they only watch DSTV. I'll have you know that on the multi-choice platform, the biggest viewership is on the SABC channel. So while MultiChoice is a carrier there, SABC brings the largest viewership to MultiChoice, which brings me then to the question that Mr. Phillips was asking. The conditions, in fact, the ECA Act says subscription TV, so like MultiChoice, must carry the SABC to ensure that there's a reach to all South Africans and you don't leave the SABC out. So they must carry. But then it also says they must pay for carriage of that, because you cannot have content that is produced at a huge cost to government, the SABC, and then it's carried for free by these platforms. And by the way, MultiChoice pays all the other channels. They have what they call carriage fees, you can check. So they pay everybody else but the SABC. And I will take it even further to say, while the minister is mulling this funding model, I wonder if he is also considering how he can use the collection capabilities, even of institutions like MultiChoice, to collect on behalf of the SABC, because they benefit from the public mandate of the SABC, which is unfunded. So I just wanted to respond to that, to say we are a serious believer that MultiChoice, there must be a must carry mandate there must be a must pay mandate. Obviously, the commercial sensitivities would not be part of the discussions of Parliament, but there must be a movement towards that. Then Mr. Phillips wants to drag me to Elon Musk. So we don't know about what is happening with this company, Starlink. I think we read in the media. We have not been afforded an opportunity by the minister to take us into confidence on the discussion. So a lot of what I'm saying is really speculative at this point. But what we are reading is that the minister seeks some sort of exemption from the BEE legislation in order to accommodate Starlink. Now, I must say right from the onset that we are a great believer and a great supporter and advocate of investment in this country. And we would welcome services such as Starlink, which are able to help us, we hope, realize our goal of universal coverage, especially in underserved areas. Whether there has been any attempt to study the feasibility of that, the cost of that, I don't know. So we're really just making suppositions in terms of what is floating around in the media. Having said that, we do believe there's been a lot of investment that has been made by our telcos in this country, and they have done that according to the laws of this country. There is no country that doesn't have its own laws governing how businesses do business in their area. The United States, for example, you would have seen last week or the other week when they had an issue with TikTok. They wanted to ban TikTok in their country, and President Trump then said, no, TikTok can continue to operate in the US, provided the company is 50% owned by the United States local, United States citizen. Countries do have laws. And in South Africa, we have BEE legislation which says in the specific sector where this company wants to operate in, there shall be a 30% BEE. Now it's there, it's in law. If you are going to change the rules, right, you cannot do that in the middle of the game. And I think that's that we're arguing. So as Minister Malatsi seeks to, invite, if that's the word, Starlink into South Africa, I think it needs to be done within the existing laws of this country. Otherwise, you are creating a different legislative framework for an individual company, and we don't think that that is the correct way to do governance. I know that the process will obviously have to go through multiple stakeholders for consultation, and if there's a view that legislation must be changed, then it must be changed across for both your terrestrial as well as your satellite operators, and not just to accommodate one single company. So that is our view on that one. Dr. Khulisi, thank you so Kholisane? Yes, thank you so much for your comments. I think the Chair of Science and Technology has answered this, except to say that one of the things that we want to do around really driving a digital skills revolution is to bring together, this whole entire ecosystem. You find science and technology doing one thing, you find NEMISA doing one thing, you find other institutions in other areas across the Department of Higher Education, Department of Labor, DCDT, and we want to ensure that there's a common approach. So next time somebody asks us a question like you are saying, step by step, what do I do? Then it's easy for us to refer them and say, this is how the ecosystem works and this is where you enter. And we're hoping that with the collaboration from the other portfolio committees, we'll be able to drive that. Maybe let me just finish my point, which I think I may have, on the provisions of the SABC bill. So over and beyond the funding model that we spoke about, Mr. Nodana, just to say that it also then seeks to establish a commercial board, so to separate the public mandate and the commercial services of the SABC. That commercial board is a point of contention because the bill is currently proposing that the minister would appoint that particular board, which is obviously not what has been the practice with Parliament or with the President appointing on the recommendation of the National Assembly. And once again, I want to say this is not a train smash. It's really not a train smash. If the minister's opposition to the SABC bill is based on the two issues, the funding model and the appointment of the commercial board, these are issues that we can amend. They are not insurmountable, and we can do that without delaying this process for the further 2 years or so. On the funding model, Mr. Nodana, it says that the Minister of Communications, together with the Minister of Finance, will have up to 3 years to finalize that funding model. Up to 3 years doesn't mean it must take 3 years. I would hope that Minister Malatsi is currently in the process of developing that funding model. So as we continue to amend this bill, he will be able to make his input. Failure to do so and withdrawing that bill means whatever funding model he seeks to develop anyway, he'll do so without a legislative framework. Where is he going to put it? Because there is no funding model framework currently except for in this bill. And I do want to say this is not a money bill. So I'm hoping that the minister is not thinking that he would be able to appropriate funds to the SAB through the SABC bill. I think I am done, Chairperson, unless Mr. Phillips wants to repeat the question on the electronic communication fees.
Thanks so much. It was just a clarity. I may have not been paying 100% attention when you were presenting, but you were speaking around a regulation or a reform in relation to Netflix and Showmax.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So what we are trying to push for, and I will make this point, that our portfolio committee does not believe that we sit in Parliament to be rubber stampers of things that come from the executive. The Constitution is very clear on our mandate. We are lawmakers. We are not movers of paper relating to law. And where government is not moving on certain things, we will not hesitate to bring forward a committee bill or even a private member's bill. Now, this issue of the regulation around the over-top services has been spoken about forever. You have companies such as Netflix, Showmax, Spotify, Google, and so forth that come into this country, and they are just not regulated. They do not pay tax in this country. They hurt and harm the likes of SABC, because SABC will create content. You go and you search it on Google. You're able to get that content without, paying to the SABC anything, but the Googles of this world will benefit. I mean, the devastation that we're seeing at MultiChoice, for example, is the impact of these over-the-top services, which do not have any license conditions, no obligations, nothing that we expect from the rest of the players in the sector. Now, what we are saying is that that regulatory framework needs to be created. There must be policy certainty in that area. How are we going to ensure that these companies continue to operate in our country within a particular governance framework? So that's what we are going to be looking at during the course of this year. And I mean, we know some of the debates there on whether they should be paying the network carriers. That's not our business. I think what we're interested in is that you cannot be operating in this country, and while you may be doing things of corporate social responsibility, but you're not contributing to the obligations that the local partners have, and we would want to set that right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, the problem of dealing with former spokespeople is that they will take over and run a press conference within a press conference. So she was already fielding questions. You know? Thank you very much on a serious note to the chairpersons for their eloquent, very detailed, informative presentations, and as well as the responses and engagements. Thank you very much to yourselves for the engagements as well. Are there other further? Oh, I thought that from the virtual.
Yes, from the virtual platform. Okay. Still from the chairperson, Mr. Hadebe, who is the provincial chair of the organization called Unmuted Coalition. And he's got two questions, two more. How will the chairpersons ensure that the voices of the marginalized be represented in communities and represented in economic decision-making processes? Is there any platform to submit suggestions or inputs before the committee sittings or meetings? And another one, his last one, how will the economic cluster committees ensure that their decisions are evidence-based and informed by research and data? And also, how will the chairpersons of the committees address the burning issues of unemployment, particularly among the youth and the 35 to 45 years in their respective areas? Thank you. Those are the last questions.
Yeah, I'm going to ask just, not all the chairpersons, but Chairperson Maneli. Yes, Chairperson Maneli, just 3 minutes to conclude. Yes. And then we will be done. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Hadebe, for the questions. And as already said, delegated. So you can see it's 3 against 1. So I have to accept. Maybe let me start from the point of how the marginalized get to participate in the committees and influencing the decisions in that score. The first point, it's really that Parliament itself and its committees, as per the rules, are open to the public. And in that score, the public is able to follow deliberations and be able to make submissions in that score. Of course, there's also a petitions process where you are able to make a petition. And in some of those, it will be a response given. But there have been instances where Parliament would take up whatever stakeholder that may have raised an issue to also engage at a committee level so that those matters are engaged. So that participation, at least in that score, is guaranteed. But over and above that, especially when it's about making legislation, there's public participation where you get to the different areas to reach out to members of the community, especially those who may not have your digital platforms to make submissions. So you've got both online submissions as well as physical engagements. And therefore, when we say the law has gone through those stages, it is because there's evidence to show that public participation was there and people would have been either physical or otherwise having made submissions. So would encourage you from the stakeholders, your constituencies and so on, use that opportunity to really engage with Parliament. So I would want to leave it at that point. I think the issue about the youth, the unemployment, and that this is the focus of government as we speak. Hence, you've got many of the programs, whether it is the National Youth Service, whether it is what I had mentioned about LAP. Of course, I didn't take up all the projects, but just to demonstrate the point about the education, the education assistance. Mostly, it's young people that get this first-time opportunity. And as it is presented, you would know by now that from an employment and labor point of view, that's what also the UIF through this lab will be taking an opportunity to empower young people. But if I were to go back to the point I've made, that unemployment is not an issue about just the Department of Employment and Labor, because it has got employment. But necessarily what we are looking at this point, firstly, it is the consolidation of the mass public employment, where there is centrality in terms of coordination, because that is almost in every department, whether you call it the EPWP here, the CWP here, and then you have the lab here. As a result, we cannot, just from a point of accountability, what impact are these programs making? So that consolidation, it's important. That's the mass side of things. But of course, this is also dependent on getting the social compact working, because government alone would not be able to do this. You also need the private sector creating those opportunities, including the training in that scope. But at a higher level, we do know that at TIC, even though it may not be this portfolio, but as they are part of the cluster, that they are also looking in real terms on the industrial policy for the country, so that both the skills that you give to these young people and any other person that is eligible for employment are contributing to that industrial strategy of the country in that scope. So that consolidation will then also means that it's also on the skills side, because even with the skills, it's different entities of government that are dealing with that, and we may not be contributing to that bigger picture. If I were to close by saying at least the future still remains brighter, because the leadership is seized with the challenges, and they are hard at work in this regard. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for those closing remarks, Honorable Chair. It's Vala much. No more questions. You can see that we are beginning to do well with time. The last cluster briefings were taking 3 hours. This one has taken under 2 hours. So we are beginning to improve, but just in closing to say that we will suspend these briefings for the next 2 weeks, and we will continue after 2 weeks. Why? Because next week we have got State of the Nation address, and we have got a special media briefing where the presiding officers will be announcing the state of readiness to host this important State of the Nation address. The week after, we continue with a very hectic schedule of the joint sitting again. We will have the debate 2 days on the Tuesday and Wednesday of the joint sitting on the State of the Nation address, and then the president will, that Thursday, immediately after those 2 days, come again and reply. The week after, I think we have got the budget speech. So you will be informed of the revised schedule of these media briefings so that we give a chance to the issues that are developing from the two houses. But just to also take advantage of this platform to say that in terms of the accreditation for the journalists who will be covering the State of the Nation address, we have received, of course, hundreds, as we normally do, and then we will choose the members of the media who are bona fide members of the journalists, because we have got all manner of applications from those who are not journalists, so we can only accommodate journalists. So the list of those that will be approved to cover the State of the Nation address is published today on the parliamentary website. The reason why we are publishing it is to ensure that between now and the State of the Nation address, and I think we are giving it a few days, we can receive complaints where we may have, erroneously excluded proper journalists. They've got an opportunity to call us, and then we verify, and then we are able to provide them with accreditation if they are indeed journalists. But also, it is to ensure that they can start making arrangements, especially those who are coming from, because most of the journalists will be coming from outside of the Western Cape. They can start with their travel arrangements so that they can come and get the accreditation card. So from the 3rd of February, on Monday, the government garage on Hope Street is open for the collection of accreditation for those who are approved, and their names appear on the website. So you can start coming from Monday to do so. But we are encouraging that colleagues in the media must come on time, because we often go and queue last minute, like on the eve of the State of the Nation address, and then people become emotional and upset about the long queues. And yet we open, from the 3rd up to the State of the Nation address. So take that opportunity, because it will not be busy, it will be quick in and out. So we encourage you to fetch those accreditation cards on time. And then the broadcasters who will be broadcasting live outside the hall at the precincts, because now with the handing over of the City Hall, I think tomorrow, it becomes the extended precincts of Parliament of the Republic of South Africa in terms of the law. So those who will be broadcasters, who will be doing live broadcast for the State of the Nation address, you are informed that you can start erecting your makeshift studios on the parade from the 2nd of February. From the 2nd of February, am I correct? Yes. But on the 2nd of February, if you want to start erecting there, it means that you are responsible for your security, the security of that infrastructure. And then Parliament will only take over that security responsibility the day after, from the 4th. Yes, so from the 4th, we will be taking responsibility for securing that infrastructure, because it would have been cordoned off in terms of the law that governs the precincts of Parliament. Yeah, you will have the Parliamentary Communication Services officials that are there to assist you with, because we've been talking with you and agreeing where your studios will be erected. So there is designated spaces where you are supposed to do the erection of your makeshift studios. Thank you very much. I think that those are the important announcements that we wanted to make, and we hope that you will comply with that, because it's very important. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you again to the honorable chairpersons for coming to address you and to engage with you. And thank you again for coming, our esteemed stakeholders, members of the media. Thank you very much. The press briefing is adjourned. You are invited for lunch next door. Yeah, thank you very much.